What's going on, all you mentees? It is Tuesday. That means it's time to take an advanced look at these collected editions coming out from Marvel Comics this week. So, stay tuned. And welcome back, everybody. Now, before getting started, a huge thank you to David Gabriel and the fine folks at Marvel for sending us advanced copies of these trade paperbacks. All of these books are due out in the direct market and the book market on November 23rd or 24th, depending on where you get your books. Now, I've done some overviews of books coming out on the 23rd and 24th last week, so if you want to go back and watch that video, you're more than welcome to. I always put timestamps in the description of the video to let you know which books I'm talking about at what time, in case you want to jump around. Alright, so let's go ahead and get started. We've got a couple of trades and this little digest-sized book, and of course this epic collection. Kicking off this week is Web of Spider-Man, and it is not a follow-up to the Web of Spider-Man series that you're probably accustomed to. Here's the back of the book. But it is a brand new series by Kevin Shinick, and it is Worldwide Engineering Brigade. That's what Web of Spider-Man stands for. The artwork is by Alberto Albuquerque with colors by Rachel Rosenberg. And this is what the artwork looks like. Now, one thing I will say is that this feels like it's in a pocket universe. It doesn't feel like it's part of the 616 universe. So I think it really depends on your take on it. So it's all about Peter Parker, Spider-Man, teaming up with these group of young characters here. You have Onome, you have Lunella Lafayette, who is Moon Girl, and then you have Harley Keener, who made his first appearance in Iron Man 2. Was it 2? No, 3. Iron Man 3. The movies. And all of them are all these engineers that are working together to make the world a better place. And then we get Doreen Green here, who steps in, and that is, of course, Squirrel Girl. And pretty much the premise of this is that there's something that accidentally happens to the power grid, and all these holograms become really powerful, and they start merging into one hologram that just becomes super powerful. And then it's up to the Web of Spider-Man to take them down. And that's pretty much the premise of the story. And the reason that I said it doesn't really feel like a 616 type of story is because of the treatment of Peter Parker. Iron Man shows up here and he starts just immediately yelling at Peter Parker. And I can't imagine Peter Parker 616 putting up with crap like that. And I know, since One More Day, some of the things have been undone. But I can't imagine Peter Parker taking crap from Tony Stark. It is definitely written in a YA style, so young adult style. So for young people to get accustomed to the character of Spider-Man, maybe because the movie's coming out. So it does feel more like a movie version of Peter Parker than the comic 616 universe Peter Parker. Now, the book has 112 pages. It does retail for $13.99, and the dimensions of this particular book, I said it was digest size, are a little bit smaller than your trade paperbacks, like this one here. Even though it's an epic collection, you kind of get the idea of just the dimensions of this particular book. Now, as far as the extras in the back, there are no extras. All the variant covers are on the opposite side of the standard edition cover. Now, this book does collect all 5 issues of Web of Spider-Man. There's only ads like this in the back. So let's keep talking about the Spider-Verse universe and talk about Silk. So this is Silk, Threats, and Menaces. Here's what the back of the book looks like. So Cindy Moon is back. Now, keep in mind, all of this takes place after those 3 collected editions. So in those 3 collected editions, Cindy Moon had just woken up from her sleep after being in a state of suspended animation for over a decade, and she's trying to get back to her family, find her family. So all of that stuff is resolved in those 3 complete collections. This takes place afterwards. So this is all written by Maureen Gu, and it is drawn by Takeshi Miyazawa. And then there's colors says by Ian Herring. And Miyazawa has actually done stuff with Ultimate Spider-Man and Spider-Man Loves Mary Jane. So very familiar with the characters in the Spider universe. So Cindy Moon is back. And this time around, She has her own 5 issues. I believe this is a 5-issue miniseries. I don't think it's ongoing, but I could be wrong. Please let me know in the comments down below if I am, because it does read like a miniseries that could be left open for more issues later on. But all 5 issues are collected in here with 112 pages, retailing for $15.99. Now she is working for this online magazine called Threats and Menaces. Okay, it's not really a magazine, it's like an online column, and it's all led by this guy right here, her old boss, J. Jonah Jameson. That's right, he is now leading the group in Threats and Menaces. Seems like there's a lot of people working. This might feel like a superhero version of TMZ. I can't believe I just made that comparison, but that's what this book is called too, Threats and Menaces. So the basic premise of this particular story is that there's a new villain that's coming around, and it's killing gangsters in the underworld. Now, the new villain doesn't come alone, because they come with this big demonic cat who's named Kasha. And Cindy has a new therapist, so this is what the creepy Kasha looks like. Now, all of this may or may not be related to this new CEO of this tech company that has shown up, named Saya Ishii. And Saya has actually a secret. She has ties to a Spider-Man villain, maybe, but you don't know if she's playing the good side or the bad side. You can find out for yourself exactly where she fits into all of this. But there is a returning Spider-Man villain that, honestly, I kind of thought he was still around, but they made a big deal of it, so I guess I've been out of touch with Spider-Man for a while. I'll let that big reveal come to you in case you are wanting to read this and I don't want to spoil it. As far as the extras, this is the way some of the variant covers are collected in here in these thumbnails. It's a really cool cover right there. I like that angle. And is that her? Oh, okay, that's those are her legs. She's wearing a skirt, or a dress rather. And then other variants. That's a beautiful variant right there by Judy Young. And then where else you can get Silk in the Spider-Verse complete collections. They're not called complete collections, but they are as thick as complete collections. The Mighty Valkyries, all hell let loose. Now, it seems like Marvel has figured out a way to keep this phenomenal series from being canceled by just making mini-series out of it. So we had Jane Foster Valkyrie, and then sadly the series got canceled. It was really good. And then we had the King in Black time, which brought back the character in a form of a miniseries. And then we have this miniseries. So we have a Jane story here by Jason Aaron and Tarun Gromberg, who has been writing and co-writing the Valkyrie book with, I think the first one was written by 3 people, also Al Ewing. And then we have a new Valkyrie story. And the art is what I want to talk about, by Mattia Di Ioluis. And also Erica D'Urso does the artwork for the new Valkyrie. And when I mean new Valkyrie, you're probably familiar with her character from the movies, but she was introduced into the 616 universe, I believe in the King in Black tie-in. But this artwork right here is phenomenal. I was just blown away, and I was hoping that they would include this, because there's a Jane Foster OHC, oversized hardcover, that's coming out next year. And I was hoping that maybe they cancel that to include the other miniseries, like the King in Black miniseries, and this in there, and just give us a Jane Foster, well, without calling it an omnibus, unless they want to. That would be cool if we get a first Jane Foster omnibus. But I was just blown away, and I'll show some more art in here. But this is pretty much Jane Foster reestablishing her life. She is no longer a doctor, sadly, because she's always going away on missions. She is now a morgue assistant, mainly because she keeps getting away from the hospital. They can't rely on her to become a doctor when they need it. And that makes sense, right? Like there's always been this thing with, well, when Thor was Dr. Donald Blake, it seems like there were no ramifications because he would just take off at any time. But with this, they were like, yeah, you could still be an assistant or a morgue assistant. So that's what she does. And this is what the artwork looks like. So yes, she does come up on Loki at a bar, and she immediately knows it's him. And he starts telling her about this oncoming evil that's going to come and take souls here in Midgard. So it's up to her and him to team up and stop it. This all does have ties to this lady right here, Carnilla, who we haven't seen since the War of the Realms, but it does have ties with her. Now, there's another story in here, and this is the new Valkyrie story. It's her trying to find out more about her past, and actually, she does come face to face with some of the things from her past, and all these stories will come together towards the end, so one does have something to do with the other. But I really enjoy this, and honestly, I kind of wish this was still an ongoing series. I know we have so many, but we can always use Jane Foster. She was a badass Thor, and what they did to her character... But anyway, I thought it was redeeming what they did to her character in the War of the Realms. We do have a Spider-Man villain that I'm sure you saw there come into play into this particular series. But yeah, look at this beautiful artwork. Can you imagine this in oversized hardcover format? Oh, it is absolutely stunning. That is so badass. Now, the book collects Mighty Valkyries 1 through 5, and it retails for $15.99. There are 120 pages in here. Just the amount of detail that goes into the feathers of her wings and her chain armor. And it's not fair to compare both of the artists because they both have their own unique style. But I just really enjoy this painted look to it. It gives that fantasy element more oomph, more power behind it. Now, as far as the extras, of course, censoring that last page, but here is a Russell Dodderman cover. And then other covers are collected like this in thumbnail size. That is an awesome cover by Peach Momoko. I really like the design of that cover right there. I'm not sure what this is. This is a character select Valkyrie versus Hydro Man. Looks like, I mean, it's supposed to be a take on a video game, but I don't get it. That's awesome. That's Mahmoud Asrar. And then other covers back here, including the one by Terry Dotson. And where else you can find Valkyrie in collected editions. I think there's a total of 3 of them so far. 4 including this one. Reign of X, Volume 6. Continuing the anthology collection of this era of X-Men right here. So this collects Sword number 4, X-Men 18 through 19, Marauders 18 through 19, and X-Force number 17. 160 pages, retailing for $17.99. Huge fan of this cover. Huge fan of this particular story, really. And here's Al Ewing's Sword, jumping into an immediate crossover. This is the King in Black crossover. But, man, this was a fun series. Bringing back a lot of characters. I mentioned WizKid and Mentalo earlier. But I just like the use of Al Ewing's characters. Valerio Schitti is doing the artwork in here. And he's known for drawing things like Empire. So big events like Empire. And now he's drawing this ongoing series, which is really damn good. Especially the portrayal of Magneto in here. And just a lot of underused characters that show up here. This particular issue, it's interesting to see Al Ewing just kind of roll with the punches and get thrown into the middle of an event. But he does a damn good job. And then we get X-Men. And X-Men 18 and 19 is the return of the Children of the Vault. I remember a year or so ago we were talking about, maybe when I was reviewing the Hoxpox series, how big of a fan Jonathan Hickman was of Mike Carey's run on X-Men. And this proves it more and more that he loves Mike Carey's run. And here we have the return of the Children of the Vault. And Synch and Darwin, as well as Wolverine, all get thrown in here. And during this particular mission, time flows differently. So you see them aging a little bit. And there's some awesome scenes in here that are just complete badass. Synch finally gets to shine. You know, he's been back for just a little bit, but it doesn't seem like he's taken any kind of spotlight. So it's nice to see him just shine some. You know, because when you have a character like Wolverine in a series, you immediately think that she's going to be the badass. But I think that Synch has a lot more badass moments in this particular series, or in this particular issues. And then we have the Marauders issues here, which focuses more on Callisto and Mask and Bliss and all those characters, all the Morlocks pretty much. Oh, and one more thing. I don't think Laura was going as Wolverine. I think she's going as X-23 again in those particular issues. But yes, this issues of Marauders focuses more on the Morlocks from that team and paying their respects. Back in Madripoor. And then we get the Quentin Quire. Yes, this story right here from X-Force, which makes him kind of appreciate life even more. Not that he's appreciative of anything, but it only focuses on him and Phoebe, and that's all you'll see in here. And then as far as the extras, here's how the extras are collected in the back. Some of them are thumbnail variants, and then some of them are splash page variants. That Peach Momoko. If you want the full splash page variants, then the trade paperbacks of each of the individual series, that's how they're collected in there. Usually. I want to say usually. Watch him change that now. And this is the Jen Bartel, I think? Yeah, Jen Bartel, Emma Frost variant. Star Wars, War of the Bounty Hunters. Now, before I even knew what this was, my viewers that have been collecting comics weekly have been telling me about this and asking me if there's a chance for War of the Bounty Hunters to come out in oversized hardcover format, in omnibus format, including all the tie-ins. And now I understand why. So this collects War of the Bounty Hunters Alpha and War of the Bounty Hunters 1 through 5. And it's Steve McNiven's artwork that I could see why people want an oversized hardcover. But I think Luke Ross does an amazing job too. But just the amount of detail that McNiven puts in his art, oh my god. Of course I want this to be in an oversized format. That would be so awesome. So the story here is actually pretty cool. It's a cool idea. It's an interesting premise. This takes place, of course, between Empire Strikes Back and Return of the Jedi. It's right after Boba Fett is hired to take Han Solo's body back to Jabba the Hutt. And there's also this character that calls himself Jango Fett, so there's a whole mystery behind that. Look at the detail, man. That McNiven. I do love that artwork. Which takes him forever to do, of course, ongoing series. And you can find out who Jango Fett is by reading the book. But yes, Boba Fett is hired to take Han Solo to Jabba the Hutt. So if you haven't seen the movies, this might be spoiler-ish territory. But if you've seen the movies, you're completely fine. I can't imagine very many people reading the comics that haven't seen the movies. So, the premise of this is pretty much somebody has taken the body of Han Solo away from Boba Fett, and now it's up to him to get it back. Hence, the War of the Bounty Hunters. So somebody out there has taken Han Solo from Boba Fett, and now he wants him back. But this includes everybody, though. You see Princess Leia in here, Luke Skywalker, Dr. Aphra, and Valance makes an appearance, one of the most famous bounty hunters that originated in the original Marvel Comics series, this guy right here, that has ties, heavy ties, to Han Solo, since they both kind of grew up together in the same academy. Now, this is Luke Ross's artwork, and it's interesting to see his art look like this, because it's so, how do I put it, it's so bright, it's so full of color, when I'm used to his art just being darker and using lots of shades and lots of contrast. And it seems like it could be the inker, or it just could be the colors that are done this way. And yeah, it just looks different. Definitely a lot different than what I'm used to. Looks more like his older stuff when he first came on the scene, like drawing pages of Spectacular Spider-Man, than his stuff with Ed Brubaker on Captain America. So see, you get all these characters that appear through here. Now, I've read this and it was a lot of fun. I thought it was a pretty fun story. I want to know how it would feel like to read this with the other series that crossed over with this, like Dr. Aphra or the ongoing Star Wars or Darth Vader, to see how fleshed out some of these side stories were. That's what I would love to see. So yes, of course, I would love to have this in an oversized hardcover format collected with all those issues, tie-in issues, or an omnibus format. That would be really cool. But if you're wondering if you could just read this as a standalone thing without having read anything else, you absolutely can. All of this written by Charles Soule, by the way. The book retailing for $19.99, and it collects 160 pages in here. As far as the extras in the back, we do have some toy variants, and we did have variants in between the chapters, but I don't want to show those right there because they could be spoilers. Now, this does lead into another story. I didn't say that. Like, it feels like this leads into something else. As a matter of fact, the variant of this, it says continued in Crimson Reign. So if you're reading that, let me know how that is. And let me know what you thought of this particular story. X-Men Legends Missing Links. Oh my gosh, this was... Woo! Oh, dude, this is my pick of the week. Unless, you're not familiar with 90s X-Men, unless you're not familiar with that lore, that stuff means nothing to you, then by all means, Star Wars War of the Bounty Hunters, I think, was a lot of fun. But this, holy crap, did this speak to just 12-year-old Omar, 13-year-old Omar, sitting in his room, mapping out the Summers family tree. And we knew, right? Like, we all knew that this is what was going to happen one day, and it took decades for it to happen. So what the premise of X-Men Legends is taking a lot of these classic stories. I say classic, they were classic to us, okay? A lot of these classic stories that for some reason the writers and artists never got to finish. Mainly the writers, the creators, like VALKYRIES. And Louis Simonson's in here, and so is Peter David. So I'll focus on one of them mainly, and that's the big one here, which is Adam X. VALKYRIES introduced us to a character named Adam X, the Extreme, because it was the 90s. Everything was extreme. This guy had like spikes everywhere, wore his baseball cap backwards. We immediately thought, that dude's cool, right? Like, all of us did. And he hinted at the idea that Adam X was the third Summers brother. Now, that's not an original idea, of course, because Chris Claremont originally wanted Gambit to be the third Summers brothers. As a matter of fact, you could tell with the way that Gambit charges up his cards with his eyes. Anyway, in the 90s, we got Adam X, and it was strongly hinted. I mean, it laid it out there in the pages of, Captain Marvel, in the pages of X-Men. It was just everywhere. And pretty much any title that VALKYRIES was writing at the time, which was just about everything, he was laying out the clues that this guy was somehow related to Havoc and Cyclops. And sure enough, in this, it's all revealed how all this came to be. Now, the very cool thing for all you X-Men historians is that I believe somewhere here this states, was it really 30 years in the making? Oh, God, I feel old. Okay, editor's note, this story takes place after X-Men 39. I didn't see that until later, but that's the issue where he's holding, it's a Terry Dodson cover, I think, or no, it was Andy Kubert, where he's holding Grandpa Summers. Oh, to have this story come back 30 years in the making and to tie up all the loose ends, I thought Nicieza just came in firing on all cylinders. He never missed a beat. Like, it felt like this was something that could have been written back then, and it would have been artwork by Andy Kubert, probably, because he was working with him on Adjectiveless X-Men at the time. And this just brought back a lot of memories. This is drawn by Brett Booth, who's no stranger to the X-Men. He had a run on X-Men for a little bit. Like, he did some X-Men Unlimited issues with Chris Claremont and did some stuff with Jonathan Hickman. But he did the first two issues, which is that Adam X story. And the ending, oh man, the ending really hits it home to a lot of people that read that stuff. Because we always wondered, wait a minute, who's that other hand? If it's not Sinister, and you'll see what I mean. Now, the second story in here is this right here. And that is a story of X Factor by Louis Simonson and Walter Simonson. Two legendary creators. And Wheezy coming back to Cameron Hodge right after he got decapitated by Archangel. And that all took place, I think it was X Factor 39, if I'm not mistaken. This tells you when to read it. This story takes place before X Factor 43. Okay, so before they go up into space for the Day of Judgment. But yeah, absolutely. This takes place after Inferno, right after the decapitation of Cameron Hodge. So this does have some spoilers if you're reading it and if you've never read those stories. And so definitely taking place before Extinction Agenda. So it's interesting to see how Wheezy is able to just shoehorn Cameron Hodge into the story. I thought it was really well done. And of course you've got artwork in here by the legendary Walter Simonson. And we also get X-Men Legends 5 and 6, which focuses on X Factor. And the story in here takes place between X Factor 75, which is the return of Mr. Sinister, the big, huge reveal. And then, it's not a big reveal, everybody comes back. In between issue 75 and 76, which is part of the crossover with in The Incredible Hulk, the War and Pieces. And I won't say anything else about this one. You can find out for yourself. what this particular story is about. Now, the extras, I love the fact that the extras include all these toy variants, which are all done by John Tyler Christopher, and then other variants. But the toy variants, wow, look at that. That is freaking awesome. These are the connecting covers to issues 1, 2, and 3 by Ivan Coelho and J. David Ramos. That is freaking awesome. But the toy variants are the ones that got me, because that was the stuff we were I was collecting in the 90s as kids. The book has 144 pages, retailing for $17.99, and it collects the first 6 issues of X-Men Legends. And man, this was so fun. Last but certainly not least, Iron Man in the Hands of Evil. So this contains the big crossover, actually 2 kind of crossovers. It is volume 20. I believe the last one we had was the War Machine, and I think that was volume 17. So now we're going into volume 20. About to wrap up Iron Man volume 1, honestly, because after this comes The Crossing. So this has Marvel Comics Presents 169 to 172, just material, so 8 pages from here and there. It does collect Iron Man 310 to 318, War Machine 8 through 10, Force Works 6 through 7, and then Iron Man Force Works Collector's Preview. So this book has 496 pages, so almost 500 pages, retailing for $44.99. So this is really cool. So this has the prelude to the Mandarin storyline, The Hands of the Mandarin, and it also has the big fight. So this was a crossover storyline here between War Machine and Iron Man. Both of them written by Len Kaminski, who had a good run on Iron Man for a while. I mean, he's the one that introduced us to Rhodey and the War Machine armor, and the armor that we know of. I know he appeared in the pages of Avengers West Coast, and he had been Iron Man in the past. But now we get Rhodey in the War Machine armor. So he did that. And then this is kind of like his last hurrah before leaving the book. And I'll talk about why he left the book in a little bit. But first, let's show some of this artwork in here. This is Tom Morgan drawing Iron Man. And all of this leads into Hands of the Mandarin, a crossover with Force Works, which Iron Man and War Machine were a part of. Force Works spun out of the pages of the Avengers West Coast Avengers. So it has Scarlet Witch, it has U.S. Agent, it has Spider-Woman, and that is Miss Carpenter there. And it introduces us to this new character named Sentry. But all of them are crossing over with the Mandarin. Of course, the Mandarin has a big plan. Doesn't really want to destroy the world, he just wants to cripple it. And of course, it's up to Iron Man to stop him. Now, I love the way that they collect the Marvel Comics Presents issues, because these were done in between chapters. Here, let's skip a little bit. In the main chapters. So you kind of get to see the side story of Sentry and War Machine team up. Now, Force Works was written by Dan Abnett and Andy Lanning. Iron Man was written by Len Kaminski. And then War Machine was a collaboration of Len Kaminski and Scott Benson. So both of them write the War Machine title together. So this is a big 6-part crossover event between all 3 titles, and wrapping up in an issue of Iron Man. And of course, it has a big finale. This is a huge, giant-sized issue. And it leaves Iron Man a little bit different. Different enough to be manipulated later on, which will come into play in the next story, in the next big story arc. But let's keep going in here and talk about what else is collected in here. Because, yeah, Tom Morgan mainly doing a lot of the artwork. No, that's not Conan. That's actually Simon Williams. He's reminiscing about his buddy Simon, that during this time, I think it was in the first mission of Force Works, they lost Wonder Man. But this particular volume here has the Titanium Man, has Crimson Dynamo, actually, I really enjoyed the Crimson Dynamo / Iron Man armor that is in here. We have the return of Natasha Romanoff. And there's a throwback in here to her original costume. I thought it was pretty cool that she did that for old Stark. There's the Titanium Man, and there's Black Widow and Crimson Dynamo that I was talking about. Now, Len Kaminsky, his run is about to come to an end, because after this is The Crossing. In The Crossing, to a lot of people, it's the worst of times of the Avengers. It's like hitting rock bottom. To me, I really enjoyed it, but I'm a weird cat, so just saying. I completely understand, because, you know, they make Tony Stark young again, and there was something that Kaminsky said, I can't remember where I read this years ago, where he talked about he didn't want to be known as the worst Iron Man author, so he left the book before it got bad. Of course, a lot of this stuff is editorial mandated, so, you know, there's Natasha. Look at that. Nice. They did, this is cool. They did include some of the Brothers in Arms, not all of them. Because Brothers in Arms was a flip book with the ongoing, I think they tell you here, don't they? Let's see. Yeah, they tell you right here. War Machine 15, Iron Man 317, and Force Works 12 all had a flip book. So on the other side is where you would find Brothers in Arms. And it's Hawkeye and War Machine teaming up with U.S. Agent. And eventually they'll be teaming up again. I think there was a reunion in The Crossing. But what I was going to say is that this is the final issue collected in here, 318. Is that, yeah, he didn't want to be known as the bad Iron Man writer, so he left the book, and I think that's where Terry Cavanagh came in. All those years when I was reading this stuff, I just thought they gave the book to Terry Cavanagh. There are interviews back here with all the creative team of not just Iron Man, but War Machine and Force Works, so you do have some interviews with Dan Abnett and Andy Lanning, interviews with Len Kaminsky, Scott Benson, Tom Morgan, and all the other artists that played a big role in Iron Man's life. You have, I forgot about the Iron Man cartoon that led into the Iron Man toys. And just some behind the scenes of, what was it, the Marvel Animation Domination Hour or something like that. But all of that was part of that collector's edition magazine, and it's all collected in here. And then the two variant covers that came poly-bagged, and it's just the logos are different colors. As I said, variant covers. Not really variant, it's just variant colors. And then there are some Marvel swimsuit specials. This CG-looking Iron Man poster by Scott Easley. Original pages, the trade paperback cover, and then the back of the Hands of the Mandarin trade paperback. 496 pages, $44.99. Should be just one more Iron Man Epic Collection to wrap up Volume 1. Well, I guess it depends on how they collect The Crossing. But that, as they say, is that. If you're interested in purchasing any of these books, don't forget to check out our sponsor, cheapgraphicnovels.com, your online home for brand new graphic novels and collected editions up to 50% off cover price. They pride themselves on packaging your books so they arrive safely and in excellent condition, as well as prompt and helpful service. Check out the bargain deals for up to 90% off cover price. CGN is excited to announce that they are now taking pre-orders. They're making it easier for you to ensure that you don't miss out on the hottest releases. CGN is currently running a special promotion for you Minties. If you're a first-time customer, let them know that you were referred by Near Mint Condition at the checkout, and you'll receive a credit for free shipping on your next order. This promotion is valid for U.S. customers only. Cheap Graphic Novels, your source for the hottest books with the kind of deep discount and quality shipping and customer service that will keep you coming back for more. And that was the content and page count of each of these collected editions. Let me know in the comments down below which one you're most excited about. If you get all the Epic collections, if you've read X-Men Legends, what you thought about it. Oh man, that's like a fanboy's dream come true. And again, don't forget to hit that like button, subscribe, and ring that bell for notifications. Notifications will let you know when our videos are going live. And speaking of live, tonight at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, join myself, Curtis from the Epic Marvel Podcast, and Lars, formerly of Wizard Magazine, to talk about if continuity is important in comics. There'll be a live discussion on this channel at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Again, this was the Uncanny Omar. Thank you all so much for watching. Don't forget to check out our Patreon and our Spread Shop. Amazing ways to support the channel. And thank you so much to our existing patrons for making videos like this possible. And more importantly, all of you, stay healthy, stay safe out there. Much love.